the universe is just full of surprises, isn't it? I said, oh, this will probably be the lowest attendance Memorial Day. Everybody's out to picnic. And it's the biggest crowd we've had since I've been here.
We
Surprise!
we broke 50. There's 51 people in here.
Amen. I'm glad for all of you that are visitors for the first time, and we welcome you. I want to just take a moment before I do my message on the flyer that you got. If you remember, 2 or 3 weeks ago that we had this young lady here. She was visiting, and through Marvin, bless Marvin, was the catalyst for introducing me to this lovely lady, and I just felt so connected to her. And she came to the class, and she came over here, and she got up during the prayer and blessing time and said some wonderful things. But anyway, I felt Spirit just put it on my heart to have her to come. She used to be here in Charlotte, but she's now in Buffalo, New York. So I'm taking it on myself to fly her here to do a workshop for us, and I really need you to show up for this. This is a workshop that is based upon building sustainable communities, nonprofits, and spiritual centers. She's got a great reputation in helping so many groups get started and to get financially on their feet and to really grow. And I really want us to do this. So I'm willing to step out and to fly her here on my own. And all I ask is you give a nice free will offering to her so we can be a blessing to her. But she's not really coming for money. She didn't put any price on it, which I thought, okay, she's coming from spirit, from heart. So I like that. So I really want you to put this down on your calendars on Saturday, June 22nd. There will be a session at 1:10 on visioning oneness, and she's doing and has the permission to do Michael Betwith's visioning technique. And I know that's going to be powerful and wonderful. And then we'll break for a little lunch or something, and then we'll do divine alignment and gift assessment. And then Sunday afternoon, she'll be with us on community building and outreach. I really want us to show up for this. Please, please put it as a priority. If you're interested in this community and interested in growing and getting on our feet, I don't want to have this survival mentality here. We're not quite making the budget type of thing. We are people of abundance. We've been promised abundance, and I want to claim it. And I really think she's going to help us to do that.
You said the session started at 1:10, and that's kind of written close together. It starts at 10.
It's the sessions at 1:10 till 11:30, and then it starts again 10 to 1, 2 to 1.
Session 1 starts at 10 o'clock.
Oh. Thank you, Linda. Leave it to Linda. She works in our office sometimes. We don't get by with anything. Linda is an editor, so she edits. All right, 10 on Saturday morning to 11:30, and then that afternoon we do it 1 to 3.
Personally, I just want to speak on her behalf. Like, I met with this lady. I was working at a veterans hospital. Within 1 month, just from my self-image and how I felt about myself, I resigned, opened up my business, and, not to put any numbers out there, but it just, it went from zero to $250,000 within my first 2 years of business. She understands prosperity and oneness, and she does not believe in lack and limitation at all. And so she's really can inspire us to actually, to take this community, this center and everything to the next level. She's opened up hospice centers. She's wrote over $50 million worth of great AIDS grants when the epidemic was here. She went to Raleigh and fought for us, for all the, for different communities that was really infected with this. So it's like she's worked with communities and nonprofits all over the country and helped them grow. So I just wanted to speak on her behalf because I've actually witnessed this personally.
Thank you so much for that. That's great. So this is very important to all of us, and especially to me, that you show up for these. You don't have to do all 3. I hope you will, but at least try to get to one Saturday and on the Sunday afternoon. But I hope you can make it to all of them, because I think they all connect to each other in doing that. All right, so you got that down, and we'll move on with that. You know, the environment that we have lived in, and the environment in which we live in now, and the environment in which we will create, is going to set certain limits of our life. When we have been grown up into certain limitations of thinking of religion, it set boundaries to what we could believe and not believe. When we take our first modeling from our families and tribe, it also sets limits as to oftentimes what we believe. So the only way for us to expand and have an experience of expansion is to expand those boundaries or break them down. Just totally be a barrier breaker. You know, I thought about the fact if you planted a seed of an oak tree, you've seen how mighty an oak tree is, but everything starts from that seed. So imagine that you planted a seed of an oak tree in a 2-pound pot. Well, the tree is not going to grow to its capacity for which it was created for. It's not going to be able to go on beyond that pot, which is its boundaries. So we are the seed of God in the earth. Even Jesus is recorded as saying that I'm a seed that fell into good ground and bring forth after my own kind. So you are God's seed in the earth. And if you're going to live in a 2-pound pot, you're not going to grow into all that you were created to grow into. So you want to expand. You know, it's easy, and I say this to the young people, but to all of us, it's easy to just fit in. It's easy to just go with the crowd, to be like everyone else, to be popular, to be accepted. But I encourage you to be the individual that you are, to think for yourself and not be molded and shaped into what today is called to be normal, quote unquote, and to be accepted, but to be that person that leaves your mark on this generation. Every generation was to outgrow the previous generation. Every child should outgrow their parents and have a better experience than they had. That is what evolution is all about, is the evolving of each generation to move forward and to fit the environment of that time, the possibilities of that time. So 1 Peter 2:9 comes to me, and I want to read it to you out of the Mirrored Bible. I found this new Bible that's out that just blows me away. I love the language of it. So I'm going to read this to you out of there. 1 Peter 2:9. You are the proof of an authentic generation. You give testimony to the original idea of the royalty of true priesthood after the order of Melchizedek. You're a perfect prototype of the mass of the human race. You are the generation of people who exhibit the conclusion of the prophetic, poetic thought of God that has come full circle. You publish the excellence of his elevation and display that your authentic identity has been rescued out of the obscurity and brought into the spectacular light. Wow. You are a chosen generation, it says in the Amplified. You're a consecrated nation. You're a people of God's possession. You proclaim the excellencies, and God has called you out of darkness into this marvelous light. Everything starts with the individual. Whether it's a community or a nation or a planet, it is made up of individuals. Therefore, you can't just look to everybody else to do it for you. You've got to experience your own personal responsibility. Life begins and changes with maybe one person. When I think one person who came up with the idea of electricity, or one person that came up with many of the gadgets that you take for granted every day, was just an idea, a seed that was in their mind, but they allowed it to grow, they nourished it, and they failed many, many times. Hundreds of times. Edison many times failed before he came up with this idea of the light bulb. Therefore, don't be discouraged but stay true to your individual path and develop those things in which God has called you basically to do. Let's see where I want to go. You may live in a world, and we all do, whether we want to or not, but we all basically live in a world of addictions, people who are depressed, low self-esteem, and even poverty is among us. Even in the most powerful nation on the planet, there is over 100 children a day starving in this nation. We can't sweep all that under the rug because we live in it. We've incarnated in where the world is at this time and what it's going through, its own growing pains that it's going through. And God has planted us right here. This is the good ground that we've been planted into. But even though we have, does not mean we have to be of that ourselves. We have to be careful that we do not take on the thinking and the norms of culture and society in our time that tries to limit us and tries to put those boundaries upon us. If we continue to say things like, I will always probably struggle, or I will never have enough, this is the limited environment that you will create for yourself. Be careful, because people will always try to put you in a box by telling you you're not smart enough to start a business. You're never going to have the resources. You're never going to find someone to love you, etc., etc. Because their thinking is limited, they will try to put their limitations on you. It starts in your thinking, not in another person's thinking, but in the individual thinking. Nothing will change until you make up your mind that you're not going to accept mediocrity. You're not going to accept it. I remember reading about a experiment with fleas that were put into a large glass container, and the insects had been used to flying wherever they wanted to fly. But they put it into this container, put a lid on it, and they observed them trying to go beyond the boundaries of the jar because they had been used to a much larger space. And therefore, after a while observing them, they became conditioned and they didn't go very far, but they stayed within the boundary that was given to them. I'm ringing or doing something here I don't like, it's bothering me. That's doing that. And then the offspring that they had did not in any way try to even get out of the jar. And one day they came over and took the lid off the jar, and they remained in the boundaries that had been set for them, even though they could have flown to their freedom. I remember a place in the Bible in the story of Jesus and the time of the so-called resurrection happened, that it said that at that moment that the veil was rent from top to bottom and the way was made into the most holy of holies, the very presence, the Shekinah glory of God, the very presence of God. And even though 2,000 years ago the door was open for us to move into the unlimited potentials of ourself, we unfortunately have chosen to remain mostly in the confinements in which we have been born, raised, and formed in. Today I'm inviting you to fly free into the possibilities and the talents and the gifts that has been basically given to you. By being in places of affirmation and places that encourage us to move on and to be creative and to be entrepreneur and to be those who are making a mark on this generation. We need those things. Workshops, for instance, songs, messages. We need those things to activate what I call within us the seeds of greatness. It is the seeds of genius that is in all of us. Now, this does not make us arrogant or believe that we are better than someone else. Be careful of that. But you will have a quiet inner confidence knowing you were created for more. And I want to say we have all ages here. It doesn't matter what age you are. Don't use age as an excuse that you're now in your 70s or your 80s or your 60s or whatever, and that life has passed you by. I'm telling you, I'm proud of the generation that I'm in. Yes, I want to see the young people. A lot that's going on in the world today is coming from our generation today, who are stepping up and really doing most of the work today. And we're not done. We're at a new beginning. Using your years of experience and wisdom and all of the trials and things that you've gone through become your gold that you can use to empower, and to especially to empower these younger people, which is so important to taking us on. Young people, leave your mark on this generation. Go into things that are out of the box. Learn things, read things, study things that are not in the status quo, but learn the thoughts of others. Learn how other people became great. Take someone like Martin Luther King, read his life and where he came from and where he is and landed in history today. Read of all the people that we admire, and you will see that they just didn't get there overnight, but they got there because they believed in their greatness. They believed in their talent. And I say to you, young man, for singing, that I know that's in your passion, and that is something you want to do, and that's something we want you to do. And we want you to create that band and whatever it is your vision is, and to become all of that greatness that's been awakened in you. And I say that to all of us that are here today. We have to quit making excuses to settle where we are. Again, I want to say to you, you may find yourself in an environment of limited thinking, but good news, you don't have to stay there. This is not your destiny. I read a story recently about an 8-year-old boy from Kansas in the early 1900s that kind of impressed me. And he and his brother would get up very early in the morning, and they would go to school early to start the fire in the old pot-bellied stove so that the other students could come into a warm environment. One day they went in and did not know that someone had accidentally put gasoline in a kerosene container. The next morning when they lit the match, there was a huge explosion, and the little brother was instantly killed. The other brother's legs were burned beyond recognition, and doctors wanted to amputate, but the little boy was a fighter, and against all odds, he survived. He made up his mind that he would walk again. In fact, he said, not only will I walk again, I will run. His favorite scripture was found in Isaiah 40, and some of you may recognize it. They that wait upon the Lord shall be renewed in their spirit. They shall run and not faint. They shall walk and not faint, and they shall run and not be weary. That was his mantra. That's right. And he just kept saying that over and over. So after a year or so, he got out of the hospital, and his mother would take him out every day outside and set him in nature for a while. And she would set him by this picket fence. And one day, he decided he was going to pull himself out of the wheelchair. And he pulled himself, and he drug his body along the picket fence. And he kept doing that over and over every day. And finally, he took his first step. And he took that powerful step that changed everything for him. His belief is he could walk and run. And that belief stirred the seed of manifestation in him to break the barrier of limitations that was imposed upon him by his environment. He connected to this innate seed of his own greatness and faith. After he had done this, and begin to run, not just walk. 2 years after his accident, in 1934, Glenn Cunningham, the young man who was told he could never walk again, broke the world record in running a mile in less than 4 minutes. Now get this, 46 days after Glenn broke the record, someone also broke the record. Within 10 years, 336 people ran the mile under 4 minutes. When you break a barrier, you make it easy for others to come after you. So we want all of us to realize that we're just beginning to enter into that potential. Human beings only use about 3% of their genetic material. That means you have about 97% that has never been tapped into. Now, old Newtonian science said it had not been tapped into because it's left over from evolution. It's not needed. But like everything else, there's a paradigm shift, and the new paradigm says, oh no, I think that is there with information that we could use to cure diseases and do whatever. So no longer was it junk DNA, but now it becomes new possibility DNA. Unfortunately, the pharmaceutical company wants to own it because they want to make some kind of medicine or pill out of it. But the point is that we are seeing an activation within our genetic material that we never used again, through sound and vibration and frequency. It is amazing. We're getting ready here to hold our yearly third phase DNA RNA activation workshop here in July. And it's always an exciting, powerful workshop to do that with. So I think it's so important that you realize that we only use 10% of our brain power consciousness. In fact, that was Einstein. And I'm thinking if Einstein only used 10%, what is the average person out here using today? So whatever the numbers are, the point is we're not using a whole lot of who we've been created to be. Most of who we've been created to be is just laying there waiting for the signal to wake up. Every time I tap a tuning fork or a bell or a chime or anything like that, I do it with an intention of wake up thou that sleepest. Wake up that potential. Wake up that talent. Wake up that gift that is laying dormant within you and let it come forth into your consciousness. In that way, we will become co-creators and expand the experience of living on this planet at this particular time. Psalms says to us, we need to be not as our forefathers, but we need to be a generation to come who is not stiff-necked and rebellious. And I'm asking us all to become a new generation. There is a new gene in you. It's called the seed of the Christ consciousness that is in you. It is the seed that if you will give it a larger limitation to grow, it will manifest itself into all that it is in you and as you to the world. The world seems to be at some level, whether they know it consciously or unconsciously, waiting for something. They're waiting for some new Messiah. They're waiting for some new guru. They're waiting for some new savior to come out of the sky. But everybody thinks there's going to be an intervention. Well, I believe that too. And I'm in great expectation that something is coming forth. But I don't think it's coming forth to us out there. I think it's coming forth in here. And I think you're going to see Christ appear in you and as he is growing. That seed is maturing and growing. So please be that new generation that is not going to just walk as our foreparents. And we're glad for all the good that we got from that, but we want to surpass them and move into those new, wonderful, uncharted territories that wait for us. So I'd like to end with an affirmation for us all to say, if you would join with me in this affirmation. Together. I might have been born in mediocrity. I may not be settled here. I'm going to put an end to this generational curse, and I'm going to start a generational blessing. I am breaking the barriers of my life today, and so it is. All right, thank you. This is not a new message to New Thought, but it's a reminder that we all need to take inventory sometimes and step out as the observer of our life and realize, where have I drawn some boundaries? I remember playing a game as a little kid, and I'm an only kid, and I was taller. I know I got picked on somewhat. I don't know what it is in my neighborhood, and we played some game. It was a tag game, but we took chalk and we made these squares, and you had to stay in the square until somebody came and tagged you. Then you got out of the square and you go and hide, and then somebody finds you, and so on and so forth. And one time they thought they were going to play a trick on me, and everybody went home and left me in the square. Now, like any young person, I wanted to be validated and liked and whatever. So as long as I played that game, the rules of the game said I cannot go across these lines that have been drawn. And then it got later and later, and I could smell supper, and I thought, I bet my folks are going to be... In other words, I came to a place and I said, oh, heck. Probably that's what I said, oh, heck, in those days. Oh, heck with this. And I decided not to play the game anymore. And the minute I decided the game anymore, I stepped right across those boundaries as though they were never there, because they weren't. I drew them. They were drawn for me. So I ask you to step out of the boundaries that you've drawn for yourself. If you're saying, I'm not smart enough, I'm not talented enough, I'm not good enough at this, I'll never be able to do that, I want you to change that to positive affirmations and realize, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Use your gifts. Not only, we want you to use your gifts here. All of you that have talents, we want you to use them here, but we want you to use them out there and to outreach. Also to all of those that are looking for direction and clarity in this time that we are in, because we have a lot of crossroads to meet, a lot of decisions to meet as to who do we want to be as a people, who do we want to be as Americans, who do we want to be as human beings, who do we want to be as a man or a woman or anybody else. We have to, because we are the co-designer of what that's going to be. It's not set in stone for us. It's totally there for grabs. Yeah, so this is what I'm bringing her into. I think she's going to really help us as a community. And, you know, I'm closing. I know I say that. But anyway, Martin Luther King said that Sunday is the most segregated day in America, because African Americans go to African American churches and white folk go to white churches. And I'm telling you, we're breaking the mold at Life Center. We're breaking the mold. We're becoming a new model. And we're bringing forth this whole idea that grace trumps race. Sorry for the T word. All right. Thank you so much.